Hello, my dear angels. Let me apologize in advance. All of the chickens are screaming right now, and they'll probably be screaming throughout this video, but I'm not going to worry about it because I live in the middle of a jungle and this is nature. Welcome. I want to deep dive today into kind of the mindset that has shifted me into a more abundant lifestyle, or a more in presence lifestyle is a better way to say that. And they're both beautiful ways to say that. But there was a point in my life in the past few years where my mindset has completely shifted, and I live in a reality now where I'm grateful every single day, and I cry of joy more than I ever thought I possibly could. And it's such a gift to be able to see life in this way and experience life in this way, and I really want to share this mindset shift that took me from, I was honestly really pessimistic. And I am going to talk a little bit about where I came from, and I think I'm going to start with that. So if you guys don't know me, my name is Freya, and I've kind of been deep diving recently into the realm of mental patterning and positive shifting and reprogramming your brain. And a lot of everything that I've been sharing recently and I'm doing right now in my life all correlates around that concept, because I personally have been going through that shift. So a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I actually lived in Utah, and about 5 years ago I moved to Hawaii for the first time. But when I lived in Utah, I was an extreme pessimist. And if you had met me back then, and if you have followed this channel for a while, you may have seen me having a lot of fun and doing different things, but behind the camera in real life I wasn't a very positive person. And this is just the honest truth of what it was. But back then I didn't know this, and I think that's really important to remember as well. I didn't realize that I was seeing the world through fear, and that I was living my experience through pessimism, and that I didn't really have an optimistic view of life. And whether that was taught or it was little things that I picked up along the way, it wasn't serving me. And when I moved to Hawaii, I kind of began the journey of my first awakening, which really led to me just recognizing my own brain and my own pattern and my own choice in life. I've been through a lot in my life, as has everyone, but something that I've really recognized, and this thought shift or mental experience differentiation that I went through, is really that of escaping victimhood. And I think it's a concept that a lot of people talk about, but no one really deep dives into, because it's a really hard thing to get out of. Now, I was a victim. I had the worst victim mindset you probably have ever heard of, experienced. It was really bad, and it actually started a really long time ago for me. It started the first time that I experienced something, and then I was a child back then, so there's nothing for me to feel for my younger self other than compassion and love, and that she didn't understand either, and that's okay. And it's actually okay to be in the victimhood mindset, and I think that everyone puts it down, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's your journey in life, and you get to choose when you step into the different versions of yourself and when you want to shift your mindset. It's completely your decision, and it's also a huge part of your journey and your path for when you're ready to move into the next realm and shift. That's what human beings do. But when I was a little girl, I experienced my first essence of stepping into being the victim and victimhood. I had been surrounded my whole life by a lot of people who also had been the victim, and so a lot of it was also learned frequency and experience. But there was one point in my life specifically where I experienced something as a young child, and I later found out that what I had experienced was wrong, but young me didn't know that it was wrong. I only knew that it happened. And so in that moment, I learned through the reflection of another and what they were telling me that I had been a victim. And that was the beginning of my journey into victimhood. And I was so young that I totally didn't know that back then. But now looking back on it, now not being in a victimhood, I do recognize that it actually was a huge important part of my journey for me to be able to step into who I am today. And the whole experience of being a victim and learning to step out of victimhood was extremely important for my character and for my heart and for my just experience in this world in general. So that was when I first kind of stepped into victimhood, and I spent the next like 10-15 years in victimhood. Around that time, doesn't really matter. But when I moved to Hawaii, I was also a victim. I actually was in a very abusive relationship, and the thing is, this is the shift, or the beginning of the shift, that really brought that recognition, because this is where my first poetry book came from. So I was in this really abusive relationship, and I didn't realize it back then that I was the one that attracted it, and that I was the one walking into being a victim, because I didn't realize back then that I was already a victim, and by being a victim I was attracting that of more experiences of the victim, which totally makes sense when you look at it from a different perspective, a zoomed out lens. But back then I didn't know that. I just thought like that it was part of my life and it was experiencing, and I was like, oh, like why does this stuff happen to me? You know, I was a little bit more confused than anything else, and I was just really disconnected from my own power and my own heart and my own essence of soul. I knew that I was a great soul, and I knew that I had a lot of personality and like all the classic things. Like, we all know that we're so special. Well, a lot of us don't know. We should know more. You are so special if you don't know. But I knew that I was like my own person. Like, I knew that I had that within me, but I wasn't really in touch with it. I didn't have my power in my body. I was giving it away to other people and letting them control me, and then in essence becoming the victim. Now, in order to step out of this, what actually happened is I got out of that relationship. I had to choose to walk away from that relationship. And it was a really, really hard decision for me, because I cared for that person so much. Like, I thought they were my best friend in the world. And that was so, so hard for me to step away from. And that person had also told me countless times that I would never ever find that again. And so I'd also been kind of manipulated into believing that like that type of a thing couldn't happen, or better couldn't happen for me, and I was already susceptible. And I start my poetry book out with the line, "You abused me, but before you did, I abused myself." And I think that that's extremely important to remember and recognize. And it's kind of funny to look back at it now, because my poetry book, like, I knew that I was the one putting myself in the victimhood, or the mindset of being the victim, from day one. Like, I already knew that I was playing the victim, and you can see it in all of the words. But back then, like, I didn't even realize that, even as I was writing the book. Like, I was just disassociated from all of the knowledge and abundance of energy that I actually did know. And I would put myself down. I was in a negative thought pattern. I was really out of control of my own experience and my own brain and my human body. I wasn't in it, is the simplest of matters. And so I eventually stepped away from that relationship, and that was super, super hard for me, as I mentioned. But stepping away from that was actually my first step of stepping away from victimhood, because I stepped out of that relationship as a choice. And that was the first real choice that I made of myself, and I had to make that decision in order to get out of it. And I was the only one who could make that decision and do it the way that I did it. And that was the first big, I would say, kind of like ripple effect. Like, you drop a pebble in a pond and you see the ripples. The rock was me making that first decision, that choice, because we all have a choice. And that's one of the first parts of this new mindset of recognizing that the world is yours, life is yours. Like, this is your world to create. You can make magic everywhere by choosing to see magic everywhere. And in order for me to get to the point that I feel that way now, I first had to make a choice in my own life. That was a really hard choice for me to make, to ripple effect out and recognize that everything is my choice, and everything had been my choice. And from that point, I actually ended up in another relationship, which was actually very healthy. It was very beautiful. It was so beautiful that it actually sent me back a bit, and I ended up falling out of that relationship as well, because a lot of stuff with my own self-worth. But in that experience, I actually was being treated so kindly that I thought and continued to play a victim of I'm broken. Like, the relationship before that second relationship had hurt me to the point that I would never be whole again. Even though I was already whole, I was always myself, and I had everything I needed within me, and I just totally didn't see that because I was like, everyone's walking on eggshells around me because I'm ruined. Like, I will never find anything again in this place because I'm not me. I'm not whole. I'm always gonna have all of these triggers because it was an abusive relationship, and all these triggers of trauma came from that, and I was like, I'm never gonna be able to move past this, playing the victim once again. And I continued through that for another while, until one day, this is so funny because I don't actually remember who said this to me, but I had a conversation with someone, and someone must have said, it's kind of funny because this actually happened to me recently as well, where you have a conversation with someone and you've had that conversation a million times before, but this time, for some fucking reason, it just hits so hard. I was having a conversation, so this happened a few years ago, the same concept, where I'd talked about victimhood a million times. Like, my whole poetry book was written from a victim perspective, and stepping out of victimhood was really like the essence behind the poetry book, and those who read the whole thing would know that, but some poetry books, I mean, a lot of people only read one poem and they just feel that one poem, and those are snapshots of moments in time, and when built together it shows the lesson, which is the whole point of reading a whole book. But so I'd had a conversation about victimhood many times with different people, and I'd heard the concept, I'd watched so many videos on it, but this one day someone had said that I was a victim and that I was choosing to be the victim. And the reason I don't remember is because it rippled down so much that from that point in time to now, it was just a small little thing that was building over time, kind of like an avalanche. And the day that someone said that, the avalanche happened, everything fell, and it was the time I heard it. And you know, that's kind of how life works. Like, when you're ready, it will happen. Like, you will see, everything will fall in front of you, and you'll be like, oh fuck, like, has it been this way this whole time and I didn't realize? But you weren't ready to realize yet, and that's okay too, and that's the whole point of the journey. But this day, someone told me I had been choosing to play the character of victim, and that's when everything tumbled for me, and I really recognized that I was choosing to be the victim. And this was the first time, I would say, that I actually really looked at everything and I saw that. And so from that moment forward, I decided not to be the victim. I changed my whole life, and I went through a whole lot from that point until where I am today, where I've been learning to shift my consciousness. And the thing is that I chose to be the victim for a very long time. And in order to step away from choosing to be the victim, I actually had to reprogram my entire brain. From that moment was when I recognized, and then I would still play the victim. Like, it was so structured into my subconscious that I didn't even recognize when I was doing it. And I could even vouch to say that I still do it sometimes today, even with all the work I have done. And this really pulls you back to the inner work. Everyone talks about, everyone's spiritual, and even people that aren't spiritual, in my opinion, talk about doing the inner work. Everyone talks about, like, you gotta do the hard shit inside to get to the version of you that is going to glow the most, that is going to be the most you. This is that work, or it was for me. And it's when you recognize, like, oh shit, I need to reprogram everything. And for each person, it can be something different that it is that they need to reprogram. But this was the beginning of that reprogramming for me. I recognized, I saw the avalanche happen, and I was like, oh shit, like, I have to get in. I need to rewire all the little parts in my brain that make avalanches happen all the time in my life that hurt people and myself. And that was a hard realization for me. One of the hardest parts of it was actually having to admit to myself that I had hurt others too, because of this I'm the victim mindset and me choosing, even though it was subconscious at that point, and I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing. I did hurt people, and this is where everything actually started to click into place for me, was recognizing that I had made those decisions, and though I had hurt people, to be able to recognize that, look it in the face and be like, I did that and I forgive myself, and I can choose to move forward differently. The thing about life is that we really only live in this present current moment. If you're always trapped in your past, or you're trapped in the concept of a different reality, you're going to be living that over and over and over and over again in the current reality right here. And by choosing to admit that I had hurt people and forgive myself for that, I was able to step myself out of the past and into my present body. And that made the biggest difference in my life of anything that ever has. And though it's hard to admit, we are human. We all hurt people. We all make decisions that can be out of alignment or don't have the compassion and kindness and care for every single person in the room. And that's kind of just part of being human. And being able to see that, recognize it, and choose to move forward in a higher vibrational light, in a light where you try to bring and hold the most compassion you can in a moment for all parties, is the way to move forward in the frequency of abundance. I say that because it draws in real abundance, but it all starts vibrationally. And so that's how I was able to step into my current body and my current present existence and move forward with that compassion that has brought me to where I am today. Now, there is a lot of stuff that did also come into it. Like, I did a whole shit ton of hypnosis, which I am eventually working through right now to bring to things that I share, because I really want to share something, and that's what skyrocketed my path so quickly, because it does take years. But hypnosis helped me more quickly reprogram my brain by going in and actually talking to different versions of myself through trance, and being able to have conversations with parts of me that didn't feel seen, with parts of me that felt alone, and with parts of me that felt abandoned or hurt or stabbed in the back. Like, every different version of me you can imagine, I have gone into my brain and had conversations with them. And those moments were huge in the reprogramming of my brain to be where I am, to see the compassion today and walk in compassion and be in kindness as much as I possibly can be, because remember, I am still human, and we are always human, and as kind as you can be, you do have to be discerning in this human body and in this experience as you move through, to be fully in alignment with your journey and your path and what you have chosen to experience in this beautiful place we call Earth. But that is where I was able to step from there into currently, where I see so much beauty and love and kindness and joy, and I will be driving down the street and see someone singing on the street, and it will just make me laugh in my car. I am giggling and I'm having so much fun, and that all has really come from slowly working through my brain to see the good, to see the goodness around me, and to recognize that I'm not the victim. And all in all of this whole entire video, the most important step was actually that very first choice, and it was just recognizing that I have the choice and you have the choice, and that is where the real shift happens. Forgiving myself was a part of it, and moving through time was a huge part of it as well. But the most important, and the thing that really is like turning a flip in your brain, is when I recognize that I can choose better for myself, and I can choose the character I play in this world, in this reality, in this experience, because it is just like a book, it is just like a movie, and you just pick the character that you play. Like, it's really your choice. And as weird as that sounds, hopefully this has resonated with some of you. But that was my big marker point, and for others it could be a different marker point. It's really important to remember that we are all experiencing a different version of human experience, and it is the version through this body, your body, and your eyes, your reality. And you get to mark that, you get to make it, you get to create your reality, and that all comes from the decisions and choices that you make in your present body. I hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of a video, and I think it's really important to recommend a couple of things that I can give you as tools to shift yourself or wake yourself up, I guess. And I have a bunch of other videos on my channel that I also highly recommend watching. I will add one to the end of this video that you can watch that is also about things that you can do to shift your perspective. I think that anyone doing any kind of hypnosis, that is a beautiful, beautiful option. And I will be coming out with hypnosis soon. If you guys are interested, they will probably be on my website, and I'll probably do a free one on YouTube as well. And that is my #1 recommendation. The other recommendation that I have is actually going to be books. I highly recommend reading so many self-help books, because that is a huge part of what has given me the opportunity to see new different things that I can try. And I will add my Amazon link down below. It's actually through my website. You can go straight and the very first click is going to be to my Amazon storefront. I have an entire section of recommended books that will completely change the way you experience and see life, and I really recommend that as well. The other thing that I recommend that will help you shift your consciousness is spending more time with joy, spending more time with people that experience joy, because they're going to be seeing the optimism in life and they are going to rub off on you. It is so important to be surrounded by people that bring you joy and see things in life that you don't see. So really being around anyone with a perspective that is beautiful and different than yours, because that's going to also, it's just going to evolutionize your ability to grow in this world. And that is everything that I really have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and I'm sending you so much love and so much light, and I'll see you guys in the next one.